Revenge Diaries with I.M.
The moment I saw her logo on the billboard, I felt my stomach drop like a stone into ice-cold water. She actually did it, I muttered, voice barely audible. She launched it. My name is Maya Khan, and for the last 2 years, I had poured every ounce of creativity, sleepless night, and personal savings into Lumi Tech, a startup I had envisioned from scratch. I had meticulously sketched product designs, coded prototypes, pitched investors, and nurtured a small but dedicated team. Every detail, every innovation, every ounce of my energy had been invested into building something revolutionary. And then came Alina Carter, my former co-founder turned friend. We had started together, brainstorming ideas over coffee, sharing notes in late-night sessions, and promising each other loyalty. She had been there at every step, or so I thought. I remember the subtle signs I ignored. The late-night research trips, the questions about proprietary algorithms, the sudden enthusiasm for the tiniest technical detail. I trusted her. I confided in her. And somewhere along the way, she had taken my dream and made it hers. Now there it was. Her name plastered across banners, social media posts exploding with excitement, and investors lining up at her launch event. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a public one. Every detail of Lumitech's original design, our patents in progress, even the marketing strategy one had rehearsed endlessly, was now being showcased as Alina's achievement. The room felt cold as I watched the live stream. The energy that should have been mine, the celebration, the applause, the recognition was hers. And I knew deep down that she had no idea how much of her success had been borrowed from my work. But amidst the shock, a seed of resolve began to grow. I wasn't going to let this stand. Not quietly, not gracefully. I could feel the gears turning in my mind, each thought sharper, more deliberate. Alina had underestimated me, assumed I would crumble, assumed loyalty meant silence. And that assumption, it was about to be her undoing. I didn't just want my idea back. I wanted her to understand in the most spectacular way possible that stealing from me had consequences. This wasn't personal vendetta. It was poetic justice in the making. Something inside me whispered, the launch she celebrated today wouldn't go as planned. And with that thought, the fire inside me ignited, quiet at first, then burning steadily. This was just the beginning. At first, I tried to brush it off as coincidence. Maybe Alina was just ambitious. Maybe I was overreacting. But the red flags had been there all along, subtle, almost invisible, yet impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. The first sign came during a pitch rehearsal. I had spent weeks perfecting the presentation for investors, rehearsing every line, every slide transition. I had shared a draft with Alina, thinking she'd offer constructive feedback. Instead, she lingered unusually long over certain slides, nodding as if absorbing details she didn't need to know, details I hadn't even shared publicly. At the time, I dismissed it as curiosity, but later, I realized she had memorized every nuance. Then came the secret calls. Late nights, Alina slipping out to meet a client or brainstorm with a mentor. She always returned with excuses, a casual smile masking something I couldn't quite see. I began noticing gaps in her schedule, hours unaccounted for, days where she claimed to be working but never responded to messages. Something felt off, but I had no proof. The money issues were next. Investments we had raised together were being redirected. Small discrepancies in budgets and invoices that I had trusted her to handle started stacking up. Suppliers complained about payments being delayed, or orders not being fulfilled. Alina's explanation was always smooth, convincing. I'm just rearranging priorities to meet deadlines. But the pattern was clear to me, even if no one else noticed. Favoritism emerged quietly too. She had a knack for charming our early hires, taking credit for team decisions I had made, and subtly positioning herself as the visionary. Whenever I questioned her about decisions she'd made unilaterally, she would smile, shrug, and say, "Relax, I've got it covered. You'll see." And somehow everyone else believed her. I began to feel like an outsider in the very company I had built. The emotional strain was suffocating. Nights became restless, haunted by what-ifs. Could I have missed the signs? Was I imagining this? My mind replayed conversations, reread emails, scrutinized every interaction. I found myself snapping at friends, withdrawing from family, obsessing over every small detail. Trust, once given freely, now felt like a liability. Yet through the confusion and anger, a nagging sense of unease persisted. Alina's ambition wasn't just unusual, it was dangerous. There was something deliberate in the way she moved, something calculated. I couldn't yet see the full extent of the betrayal, but I felt it like a shadow in the corner of my vision. Every missed call, every suspicious meeting, every unexplained invoice added fuel to a growing fire inside me. I didn't know exactly what she had in mind, or how far she was willing to go, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this go unchecked. The first seeds of doubt had been planted, and slowly, silently, I realized I was already preparing for the moment when I would confront the truth. It was a Thursday afternoon when the truth hit me like a thunderbolt. I had been scrolling through social media, hoping for inspiration, maybe even a quiet distraction. And then I saw it. A sleek website, the product page fully live, logos, branding, even the tagline, my tagline. Lumitech, the very prototype I had spent 2 years designing, coding, and pitching, was hers. Alina's name was plastered across every header, every press release, every social post. I couldn't breathe. I clicked through the site again, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, but every detail confirmed it. The functionality, the user interface, the product roadmap, all identical to my original work. Even investor emails that had been confidential were referenced as her insights. She hadn't just borrowed from me. She had recreated my vision, polished it, and claimed it as her own. My hand shook as I picked up my phone and called her. Her casual voice on the line made it worse. "Hey Maya, did you see the launch? Isn't it exciting?" Exciting. My own work, my blood and sweat, presented as a triumph for someone else. I felt disbelief coil into anger. Anger ignite into fury. I remember pacing the apartment, replaying every moment we had shared. The brainstorming sessions, the late-night coding marathons, the investor pitch I had prepped alone while she was researching competitors. Every memory was now tainted by her deceit. I had trusted her, confided in her, believed in her loyalty, and she had weaponized that trust. The betrayal cut deeper than I had expected. It wasn't just about stolen work, it was about identity. My idea wasn't just a product, it was my proof that I could create something from nothing, that I could take a dream and make it real. And she had stolen it, wrapped it up, and presented it to the world as hers. I sat down, stunned. I felt rage claw at me, but beneath it was a cold, calculated clarity. This wasn't an emotional outburst I could waste. This was war, and I had to plan it like one. She had overplayed her hand, revealing ambition without foresight. She assumed that because she had taken my idea, she was untouchable. But every detail of her launch, the marketing, the investor buzz, the social media hype, was built on my groundwork. And that gave me the power. I could expose her, I could dismantle the illusion she had created, and I could do it in a way that left no question whose work it truly was. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. The betrayal was complete, the stakes were high, and the path forward was clear. I didn't just want justice. I wanted her to understand the consequences of stealing someone else's dream. And in that moment, a thought settled in my mind like fire. The day she celebrated her triumph would become the day her world began to unravel. For 2 days I barely slept. My mind raced through every betrayal, every stolen document, every late-night conversation I had shared with Alina in confidence. I replayed it all over and over, feeling the sting of trust turned into deception. The heartbreak was sharp, almost physical, but beneath it, a fire started to grow. The trigger came unexpectedly. I was reviewing her launch video, her keynote address, the polished demos, the smiling investors, when I noticed a flaw. A subtle technical oversight that only someone intimately familiar with Lumitech's architecture could detect. She had built her facade on my blueprint, but she didn't understand it. She had replicated the skeleton but not the depth. It hit me like lightning. She was vulnerable. Her success was superficial, fragile. She had stolen the idea, but she didn't have the knowledge, the insight, or the foresight to sustain it. And that meant I had the leverage. At that moment, grief transformed into determination. The realization was clear. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about reclaiming what was mine and ensuring that truth prevailed. I couldn't rely on chance, emotion, or public outrage. I had to be methodical, strategic, and precise. I began by organizing every piece of evidence I had. Prototype files, design drafts, emails with timestamps, investor pitch notes, and internal conversations we had documented. Every late-night coding session and every technical decision I had made would now serve as proof that the idea, the product, and the vision were mine. But the plan required more than evidence, it required patience. Alina was overconfident, proud, and blind to the fact that she had left a trail behind her. Every presentation she had prepared, every investor call she had recorded, every social post she had shared contained subtle clues that could unravel her story. I realized I didn't need brute force. I needed precision. Emotionally, the shift was profound. I felt lighter, stronger, and more focused than I had in weeks. The pain of betrayal became fuel, the heartbreak became clarity, and the disbelief became strategy. For the first time since the theft, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning, observing, and preparing for the perfect moment to strike. And the moment of reckoning? It would be public, undeniable, and poetic. I envisioned her launch event, the grand applause, the smiles, the investors' excitement, and how it could all collapse under the weight of truth, meticulously delivered. By the end of that day, I knew one thing for certain. Alina had underestimated me. She had assumed that stealing my idea would make her untouchable. She had assumed that loyalty and friendship could be traded for personal gain without consequences. She was wrong. And I was ready. I treated my revenge like a launch plan itself. Every step carefully plotted, every detail accounted for, and every variable anticipated. This wasn't a spontaneous act of rage. It was a calculated strategy to reclaim what was mine, and to make sure Alina felt the weight of her deception. I dug through my old prototype files, version histories, and internal documents. Every wireframe, code snippet, investor pitch deck, and design sketch was organized chronologically. Emails between Alina and me, chat logs where she had commented on my ideas, and timestamp files showing the evolution of LumiTech. All of it became evidence. Each piece was labeled meticulously, creating a clear map showing that the idea, the product, and the strategy were mine from the start. Alina had built her launch on my blueprint, but she didn't understand the inner workings. I studied her presentation materials, demo videos, and product manuals, noting flaws and oversights. Every mistake, every inconsistency, every technical misstep became a potential lever to expose her lack of ownership. She was walking into the launch thinking she was untouchable, but she was unknowingly leaving breadcrumbs that would unravel her story. I reached out quietly to former colleagues, early beta testers, and a few investors who had communicated directly with me during the development phase. I asked them to confirm timelines, contributions, and discussions without revealing the larger plan. Their statements would later form a chorus of credibility that left no room for doubt. The idea and its execution had always been mine. The launch day itself would be the stage. I didn't need confrontation. I needed exposure. I planned to attend under the guise of curiosity and support, blending into the crowd while keeping my evidence and notes ready. Every investor question, every product demo, every detail presented by Alina would become an opportunity to highlight the gaps between her claims and reality. I compiled a polished, factual presentation of all evidence, side-by-side comparisons of my original work and her launch materials, documented conversations proving her knowledge of the concept, and files showing my original coding, design, and strategy. The goal wasn't to humiliate blindly. It was to make the truth undeniable, leaving no question who had built what. Meanwhile, Alina remained oblivious. She posted updates, teased media appearances, and congratulated herself on the pre-launch buzz. Every smug tweet, every photo of her rehearsing in front of the team, every boastful email made it easier to expose her. Her confidence became the fuel for my plan. It meant she didn't anticipate a calculated counterattack. By the night before the launch, I felt a cold, focused calm. The heartbreak had transformed into determination, the disbelief into strategy. I had every element in place. Proof, witnesses, weaknesses, and a stage. The only remaining variable was timing, and I intended to strike with precision. Tomorrow the world would see the truth, and the person who had stolen my dream would finally learn the cost of betrayal. The launch hall was packed with investors, journalists, and influencers, all buzzing with excitement. Alina took the stage with a confident smile, her polished presentation in hand, unaware that the most significant audience member wasn't in the crowd, It was me, quietly seated in the back, dossier in my lap, heart steady, mind focused. She began flawlessly, showcasing Lumitech's features, highlighting her team's innovation, and flashing investor charts she had copied from my files. The applause came naturally, feeding her arrogance. Every slide, every demo, every word was built on my work, but she had no idea I had the means to expose her. When the Q&A session began, I raised my hand. Silence fell. Alina's eyes flicked toward me, recognizing a hint of familiarity. "Yes," she said, her tone polite but guarded. "Congratulations on the launch, Alina," I said evenly. "It's impressive. But I have a question about the code implementation for your proprietary AI module. Could you walk us through the optimization algorithm?" The room went still. Alina faltered. She stumbled over technical terms, trying to recall processes I had coded, every line of logic she had only seen secondhand. Investors leaned forward, sensing cracks in her expertise. Derek, if he were there, would have called it rookie panic, but this was worse. This was public unraveling. I clicked my laptop and projected the dossier I had prepared. Version histories, timestamped files, emails, and internal project notes showing my authorship. Side-by-side comparisons highlighted exactly where her presentation mirrored my work. Investor emails confirmed that the original concept had been developed and pitched by me. Chat logs and draft designs proved she had known the details but had deliberately withheld credit. The crowd murmured, then fell silent as the weight of proof became undeniable. Alina's polished confidence crumbled into panic. Questions from investors turned into pointed challenges. "Who actually developed this feature?" one asked. "Could you clarify your role in the original design?" another pressed. Her answers wavered. The smile she had practiced vanished. Every misstep amplified by the evidence I had meticulously compiled. She was exposed, not by accusations but by irrefutable facts. The launch that was supposed to mark her triumph had transformed into a spectacle of public revelation. By the end of the session, Alina's investors demanded immediate review. Journalists recorded every moment. The board of advisors contacted her privately, citing breaches of trust and intellectual property concerns. The empire she thought she had stolen was collapsing in real time, and the only person standing calm amidst the chaos was me. I didn't shout, I didn't gloat. I simply observed, letting the truth speak louder than any words I could utter. Poetic justice had arrived. The person who had taken my dream, assuming she could succeed on my labor, was powerless in the face of the evidence. As I stepped out of the hall later, I felt a quiet triumph. The fire that had burned from betrayal had turned into something far more satisfying. Vindication, control, and the restoration of justice. Tomorrow, the story of who truly built Lumitech would be undeniable, and Alina's stolen glory would be remembered for exactly what it was: borrowed, fragile, and exposed. The morning after the launch was eerily quiet. News outlets had covered the event with headlines highlighting the dramatic exposure. Alina's victory was already being questioned in investor circles, social media discussions, and tech forums. Her credibility, carefully built over months, had collapsed in a matter of hours. I walked into my small office, the same space where Lumitech had been born, and felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in weeks. The betrayal, the sleepless nights, and the heartbreak were still fresh, but they no longer weighed me down. Instead, they had sharpened me, clarified my vision, and proven something I already knew. The person who builds with integrity cannot be erased by theft or deceit. Colleagues who had doubted me, or quietly whispered about Alina's apparent genius, now approached with quiet respect. Former investors reached out, reaffirming trust in my leadership. Even the press began recognizing me as the true visionary behind Lumitech. The narrative had shifted. The person who had been wronged was now the one in control, guiding the startup into a future she had tried to hijack. The poetic justice was sweet, yet subtle. Alina had assumed she could ride on my work, charm investors, and claim credit without consequence. But she had overlooked one thing. Knowledge cannot be faked. Every stolen slide, every copied feature, every borrowed idea became a liability when faced with truth. Her launch day, the day she celebrated her supposed triumph, became the day her illusion unraveled. As I looked out of the window watching the city bustle below, a thought came unbidden. Betrayal can crush, but it can also ignite. It had taken every ounce of my patience, focus, and courage to turn the tables, but in the end justice had been served in the most satisfying way imaginable. To anyone watching this story, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have your ideas, your hard work, or your dedication ever been stolen by someone who seemed like a friend? If so, share your experiences in the comments. I want to hear your story, because none of us are alone in facing deceit. And if you want to see more tales of betrayal, clever comebacks, and poetic justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the community. Remember this: the person who builds cannot be erased. The person who plans carefully cannot be outmaneuvered. And the person who is betrayed, they have the power not only to reclaim what was taken, but to rise stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. Alina had stolen my dream, but I had reclaimed it. And the lesson she learned on that launch day would echo far longer than any applause she ever received.